The 49ers had a plan this weekend, and it worked. They got Trent Williams away from Washington at a time when it looked like Washington had no trade partners because the Buccaneers were interested in Trent Williams until they drafted a first-round tackle. The Browns were interested in Williams until they drafted a first-round tackle. The Vikings were in on Trent Williams until they drafted a second-round tackle. And then on Saturday, when it looked like Washington was stuck and it felt like Trent Williams was trying to get himself released so he could pick his next team and get a new contract, out of the blue, the 49ers get the deal done. Kyle Shanahan, who was the offensive coordinator in Washington, reunited with Trent Williams, the longtime left tackle there. And boom, bang, pow, right after Trent Williams is traded to San Francisco, Chris, Joe Staley announces his retirement. I kind of feel like this was all orchestrated. I kind of feel like they knew that Staley was going to retire. They just wanted to wait until after they had Trent Williams on the roster before Staley announced his retirement.
Well, this is the kind of moves and magic a really functional, not dysfunctional, but functional organization can make. I think it says a lot about the leadership of the 49ers. Not only, Jed York, but Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch that, Mike, you're right. There's no doubt. They knew Joe Staley was going to retire. They did a good job of keeping that under wraps. Plus, because they've treated Joe Staley the right way, and he has respect for Jed York and Shanahan and John Lynch, he kind of kept his mouth quiet until they got the, acquired asset that they wanted for their football team. And Trent Williams, with the history with Kyle Shanahan, I think probably wanted to go play for a guy like Kyle, knowing, what he is as an offensive genius and his ability to run the ball and all the excitement around the 49ers right now. So, this is a big-time draft by the San Francisco 49ers. It wasn't necessarily that they killed it with number of players, but they got three guys that we could all sit here and look at and go, whoa, they needed these three guys, and they got high level at that. Trent Williams at left tackle. The Ayuk at receiver because he lost Emmanuel Sanders. Oh, we traded DeForest Buckner to the Colts. Hey, we got Javon Kinlaw back for that pick we traded at a much lesser price. So the 49ers would be one of those teams I would look at to say they killed it this past weekend.
And let me just say this. This was GM John Lynch 1 week ago speaking to reporters in the Bay Area as to the prospect of Joe Staley playing in 2020. We've kept in good contact with Joe. He's doing his typical routine down with his family in San Diego, working out. We're encouraged. We've heard nothing that would lead us to believe that Joe is not going to play. So we're encouraged with that. We'll see where that goes. Look, I guess there's a chance that Joe Staley had some sort of epiphany between Monday and Saturday morning, Chris. I think the more likely reality is this is another reason why it makes sense to scratch the surface. It makes sense to not swallow the hook like so many of us are wont to do. We need to be willing to question because there are strategic reasons for lying to the fans, for lying to the media, for ultimately lying to the team that you're trying to get Trent Williams from. Because if they know Joe Staley's retiring, right? First of all, if everyone knows Joe Staley's retiring, then you got to be looking for a tackle in the draft anyway. And
right.
If they know Joe Staley's out, it's a lot easier to draw the connections from the 49ers to Williams because of Kyle Shanahan's link between the two teams. This is brilliant. And this is why, people accuse me from time to time, oh, you're trying to make something out of nothing. No, I know that in many of these cases, there's something going on behind what they're telling us. And this is a prime example of it.
Yeah, a prime example, let alone, all the things you said added to it. If the Washington Redskins know for sure that Joe Staley's going to retire, they're going to be able to ask for higher draft compensation and trades because they know the 49ers are desperate. So they'll hold their feet under the fire that way too. So really well planned out. And I'm with you, Mike. I don't know, but I certainly would think that this was the plan all along. And they got Joe Staley to just be a good team guy and keep his mouth shut and act like it was business as usual until they got what they needed or wanted to fill his roster spot. And, like I said, the 49ers, they killed it this weekend with three really quality, big-time contributors to their football team right away. Got a big-time receiver, and then, Kinlaw adds to that great defensive line where they're not going to lose much now because they lost to Forrest Buckner, and Trent Williams, before he sat out last year, was the best left tackle in football. He's a Hall of Famer. He's that talented, and that was big for the 49ers.
Scott McCloughan, who was at one point the general manager of the 49ers and then the general manager in Washington, said last week that Trent Williams is better than any of the prospects in the draft. And look, and that's really not that much of a reach because, and this gets back to the point we were discussing earlier, for the guys coming in, we don't know who's going to work out. We don't know who's going to be able to deal with Khalil Mack and Aaron Donald. We don't know that. We know Trent Williams can because we've seen it happen before. And here's another wrinkle to this, Chris, that I find fascinating. Trent Williams reportedly put the kibosh on a potential trade to the Vikings. He denies that. His agent came out not long before the trade happened with this blanket statement saying, we've done nothing to discourage anyone from trading for Trent Williams. Look, there had been a prevailing belief for months that Trent Williams wants $18 to $20 million per year as part of a rework contract after he's traded. And we know what that does to a trade. It makes it harder to happen because not only do you have to placate Washington, you have to come up with a contract that Trent Williams will like. He wants $18 to $20 million. I heard in the aftermath of the Laramie Tunsil deal from late last week that he now wants $22 million a year. Well, that's a way to avoid going to a place you don't want to go to because if you have that vague sense out there, you want this big raise, it's going to be impossible to get a deal done in Cleveland or Minnesota or Tampa Bay. But then for San Francisco, I don't want a new contract. I'm fine with it. And that's what we're hearing now. He's perfectly fine with $12.5 million for now, and they'll deal with it down the road. I don't think any other team was getting that consideration, which in hindsight made it even more clear that he wanted out of Washington and he wanted to land in San Francisco. He got what he wanted. San Francisco got what they wanted. And Washington, Chris, and this was a point you made to me via text message, and I went back and found the old stories. Dan Snyder surely did not want to trade Trent Williams to Kyle Shanahan. Dan Snyder had to hold his nose and take his medicine to get what he could for Trent Williams.
No doubt. I mean, I think there were some other teams interested in Trent Williams for sure, Mike. I know I had texted you a few of the teams that I thought or I had heard through the NFL grapevine that were in conversation with the Washington Redskins. But, Mike, I think, your last point you bring up is a very real reality. I think more than likely Trent Williams, yes, forced his way to the San Francisco 49ers. Oh, you're going to trade me here? Well, I don't know if I'll play for them. Or if I do, I want $22 million a year. He did that, and I think that kind of forced Washington's hand to go, okay, you're going to have to send him to San Francisco. We're going to get a third and a fifth. That's not that bad. And, Trent Williams, as it sounds right now, yes, obviously is happy with where he's going because it doesn't sound like he's going to ask for more money right now. So he seems to be content with the place he went because he got to where, this is where I think he had circled all along.
And here's the genius of it. It never was out that the 49ers were in play for Trent Williams, which prevented anyone from Washington, specifically the guy who signs the checks, from telling anyone over my dead body, right? It never locked in. No one ever had to take a position that they weren't going to want to back away from. That's the genius of it. We had no idea that the 49ers were in play until the cheese was standing alone in Washington with nowhere else to trade Trent Williams because the Buccaneers had their tackle, the Jets had their tackle, the Browns had their tackle, the Vikings had their tackle. Tough luck, Dan Snyder. If you want to solve this now, you only got one way to do it, and that's trade him to San Francisco. I'm telling you, they should write a book about how they pulled this off. I mean, this is the ultimate in NFL four-dimensional chess that the 49ers ended up with Trent Williams.
Well, definitely. I've heard that there were some other teams involved in this conversation too. So I think a lot of teams were off the radar trying to get their hands on Trent Williams. Of course they were, because of what you mentioned, what Scott McCloughan mentioned. We know what this guy is. He's special that way. But the 49ers, yes, did a good job. It just tells you, again, when you're a well-run organization and you do things the right way, you can pull things off like this, even when you don't have a relationship with the guy you're doing business with. Because, yes, I have a hard time sitting here thinking that Dan Snyder had better options, he would have gone another way. As we know, Shanahan didn't speak very highly of the Redskins when the 49ers played them this past season, and things didn't end well between the Shanahan family and Dan Snyder. So I was shocked to hear this. I didn't think it would ever happen, but I think because of lack of options and Trent Williams wanted to go to San Francisco, he made it happen, and it's a steal for the 49ers.
Chris, one of the reasons Kirk Cousins isn't the quarterback of the 49ers, the second year that Washington
No doubt,
tagged
Mike.
him, Dan Snyder, and the reports were out there. We ran a link to the story in writing up the whole thing of Snyder holding his nose to do the deal with Kyle Shanahan. Snyder in 2017 did not want to help Kyle Shanahan, did not want to give him the quarterback he wanted, and he was able to ultimately derail that because in the interim they traded for Jimmy Garoppolo, so by the time Kirk Cousins became available, it wasn't happening in San Francisco. But there is bad blood there. People do hold grudges, and Dan Snyder and Kyle Shanahan's holding the grudge too, though. I mean, when Dad gets the game ball after you go back to Washington and beat Dan Snyder, you know, and what Kyle said the week before the game, you made light of this, or not light of it, but you made reference to it. The idea, they asked him what he loved about coaching in Washington, what he liked the most. He said, being able to work with my dad and other great coaches. What'd you like the least? Everything else was his response. So, yeah, no love lost between the 49ers and Washington, but still the ability to get a deal done, which makes it even more impressive. A couple of other things the 49ers did this weekend by way of trades. Marquise Goodwin traded to the Eagles. That's not a bad deal, Chris, because they quit using Marquise Goodwin. He wasn't dressing for games. To get anything for Marquise Goodwin is impressive. And then Matt Breida, one of the many running backs they have, traded to the Dolphins after Breida said not long ago he thought all the running backs would be back this year. Well, they're all going to be back except him.
Well, yeah, I mean, he is, you know, Breida the cheetah. He's a home run hitter. But the 49ers, I think, look at it and go, hey, he's got a little bit of an injury history, and we got pretty deep talent at the running back position. Let's not forget Jerick McKinnon might be back in the fold for the 49ers this year. And then you're right, with the Marquise Goodwin, there's no role there for him right now. Not between Deebo Samuel, Kendrick Bourne, and now Brandon Ayuk. And let's not forget, you know, their third-round pick from last year, Jalen Hurd out of Baylor. He's going to be healthy and back in the conversation. They still had Dante Pettis. So there was no more use for a guy like Marquise Goodwin. And, you know, I think there is certainly a need there in Philadelphia for a speed guy like that. You know, I know they got Jalen Reagor in the first round, but again, you know, I think they want more than one. Deshaun Jackson, if he pulls a hamstring or pulls a calf muscle once again, you don't want your game plan to fall out the window. Marquise Goodwin can do a lot of those same type of things that a Deshaun Jackson can. Maybe not at that high of a level, but the same theory and player at least.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.